A shout out to all our brewers here with Hilltop Gang Hard Cider. Today we're making batch number 2, Black Cherry. This is going to be a fun project, so tune in, take some notes, and let's get started. Here are all the things that you're going to need to get started with this project. Today we're using a 3-gallon glass jug. And again, we have all of our supplies laid out before we get started. We're going to use Martinelli's apple juice. And of course, I found a black cherry juice that we're going to use today, and they come in 32-ounce glass jugs. We're using the Safel SO4 yeast, and we have our Yeast Nutrient. We're going to wait for tomorrow to add the Yeast Nutrient, but I still have it laid out to show you everything that we're going to be using for this project. So pretty excited. Remember, the first thing we're going to do before you start anything, you want to sanitize and sterilize all your equipment. So here, I've gotten everything washed, sanitized, and I've sterilized it in boiling water. Everything, even the tube that we do for the hydrometer that we're going to use for that, everything, we're going to make sure we get it nice and clean and sterilized. Remember, any unwanted bacteria is your enemy, so this is one of the most important things to get started before you start your brew. I'm going to take each piece out and lay that out on a paper towel to make sure everything's nice and clean and stays clean so nothing gets on that. So remember, just stay organized, keep everything out in front of you. You don't want any unwanted bacteria to get in this glass vessel. So this is the method that I'm using. Of course, you can get Star San and use some no-rinse sanitizer. Remember, it's tricky to get that glass vessel clean. I've washed this multiple times. I've got some boiling water in there, using my mitts, of course, to get everything nice and clean to the best of my ability. You want to be really careful while you're doing this. You don't want to temperature shock your glass, and you don't want to have shattered glass or cracked glass in the process of doing that. So getting it hot with some warm water at first, getting the glass ready, and then adding the boiling water after you've made sure the glass has been brought up to temperature. Okay, now that we've got that all complete, you want to start out and use your sterilized funnel, and we want to go ahead and add the Martinelli's juice. Remember, with this process, we're going to add 2 gallons of Martinelli's juice to the glass vessel. Make sure that when you do this, you be very careful. You don't want to spill your juice everywhere. Just take your time and get it all through the funnel and into your glass vessel. Remember, Martinelli's has the Newtown tip and apple that they've been using for a long time. It's a hard apple to get, so Martinelli's is one of my favorite juices to use to start out with. After we've got all the apple juice in there, we're going to start on this cherry juice. I actually found this particular brand of Lakewood juice in Safeway. It was a little bit on the pricier side. I think it was like $5 or $6 for a bottle of this. I needed 3 for this 3-gallon brew that we're making. I can already tell this is just going to taste delicious. Just the smells that are coming off the cherry juice, the cherry notes, everything that we're adding in here is just absolutely delightful. It's going to fill your kitchen up with just a really delicious aroma. Remember, just take your time, get it all through the funnel. You don't want to spill this all over your kitchen or all over your glass vessel. So again, I'm adding 3 32-ounce black 100% black cherry juice to the 2 gallons of Martinelli's apple juice to complete the 3-gallon glass vessel that we're going to use for this brew. Believe it or not, when we let this ferment, this is actually going to be a month-long process. So once we get this ready, we're going to let this sit and ferment and do everything it needs to do for an entire month. So it's critical that you do this correctly when you sanitize. We don't want anything unwanted in this vessel. We just want the yeast and to do its job. Now, when it comes to the yeast nutrient, we are going to wait at least 12 to 24 hours to get the yeast started in this, and we are going to add the yeast nutrient after about 12 to 24 hours. We're not going to do that right away. Just looking at the color of the black cherry when you add it to the Martinelli's apple juice is just amazing. It did create a lot of bubbles, so we're going to just give that a few minutes to let all these bubbles die down so we can get that yeast and everything added properly. I actually am giving this a really good shakedown. I want the black cherry juice mixed really well with the apple juice when we take the reading for the hydrometer. So once I've gotten that shook up pretty well and mixed, I'm just going to pour a little bit of that in the hydrometer test tube. And I decided that I'm not going to add this test tube back into my jug because with this type of brew with the pulp and the black cherry, you're going to need a little bit more air because it's just going to fizzle over and it could make a mess. So make sure you get your notepad. You're going to write everything down, what our starting gravity and what our final gravity is going to be with this batch. So it'll get us the total ABV on our brew. So have everything written out and ready and all your measurements that you're using. I'm going to take the hydrometer and give that a really good spin in the test tube. The reason why I'm giving it a good spin is to make sure no air pockets and no air bubbles give us a bad reading. So make sure that you take your time, let that spin out. And with this specific batch, it looks like it's going to be a 1.062. So when you get that final reading, take that, put that in your notes, 1.062. That's going to be our starting gravity level. So we're going to know the alcohol content of this brew when we're done. Now for the fun part, we're going to add our yeast. Today we're going to use the Safale SO4 yeast. I've already have an open batch from one of the previous brews that we've started with Hilltop Gang Hard Cider on batch number 1. And for every gallon of juice that we're going to brew, I'm going to do about a teaspoon of this yeast. So that's what we're going to do here. I've learned the hard way that if you don't just put it through the funnel, it's just going to go all over the sides of your vessel. These are the 3-gallon glass vessels, and they're a little hard to get things through that tight neck on the top of it. In this situation, I've actually run through all of my yeast. I've only gotten about 2.5 teaspoons of yeast in there. So what I'm going to do is open another bag of the Safale SO4 yeast. I'm just sticking with the same yeast. So I got that. I'm going to add that. It's a good thing to just keep a couple extra bags of this on hand when you order it because you don't want to run out. You want to make sure you get the right amount of yeast in your starter batch. Now that I've gotten all 3 teaspoons of yeast into my glass vessel, I'm just going to cork that up the best that I can and give this a good shake, and we're going to get that all mixed in there. Remember to keep your thumb on the top of your rubber stopper and just hold that fast and tight because sometimes when you're shaking it, a little bit of pressure can make that pop out there. But to get that yeast mixed in, you really want to give it a good shake. And as you can see, you can just see all the colors and all the aromas in this brew. It just looks absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to taste the finished result of this. Be really careful as you're shaking 3 gallons of this in your glass vessel. Disaster can happen at any moment, so get your arms ready and just take your time. Make sure you get all that yeast mixed in and the cherry juice mixed in with your apple juice. We're going to do another video later to show how I'm going to back sweeten this after it's done fermenting. Again, this project's going to take at least a month for it to sit in this vessel for that yeast to eat all the sugar. So look for that video. I'm using vodka to put in the airlock to properly seal this brew up. Remember, the purpose of the airlock is to allow the gases to leave the vessel as the yeast bubbles and eats the sugar. With the black cherry and the pulp that's in there, I've made sure I've left a little extra space in this vessel. Putting vodka in here will make sure that no bugs or any unwanted bacteria gets in there. And of course, as you see, don't waste any vodka. So if you have a little left, enjoy the shot. I've gotten everything put together. So I put in the rubber stopper. That's a drilled stopper. I fasten in the airlock to it, and then I get that properly secured into the vessel. Make sure you take extra time and do this correctly. This is the seal that you want to get. I'm going to come back in about 12 to 24 hours and then add the yeast nutrient to this brew. And then we're going to let this fully sit for an entire month. So we'll see you on our next video with Hilltop Gang Hard Cider. Thanks for joining.